I usually do that to fish. Burp right on the microphone. Welcome back, Inebri-art. I'm Andy, your host, as always. And I've always said that some of my favorite podcasts are when a stranger comes in and a friend leaves. But that's not today because a friend's coming in. Julianne McLaughlin. We've been like working together for like about 2 years, maybe three.
3, I feel like.
You've been at a lot of our events. You're a painter and painter instructor.
Yes.
Here in Mass, and you do our art shows, and I think your art's still in Buzzards Bay right now.
Yeah, it's still down in Buzzards Bay. It was in 3V and then the food court in Plymouth.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We sold a few out of there.
Yeah. That's sold awesome. In both locations.
Yeah. I just got to get my ass in gear because I have a list that I'm trying to like coordinate everybody to swap all that stuff around. It's kind of like, that's like half a day just to go from place to place and take stuff down and put stuff up.
So they're going to be going somewhere else then after Buzzards Bay?
I don't know if we have another location for you, but give it some time off and then we'll put them back in 3V. This is super riveting for everyone who's listening.
They're like, who cares about where your stuff is?
Yeah. But yeah, you do beautiful work, kind of like abstract, impressionistic type ocean.
Yes.
Stuff.
Oceany, landscapey. Yeah, that kind of thing. I think that's a really good way of putting it. I've kind of been looking for the term, how you do that, or how I do that is abstract sort of impressionism. Because when I think when you think of abstract, you think of paint colors everywhere, or like a Jackson Pollock, or that kind of stuff. And it's not. It's softer, it's calmer, and it's mostly oceanscapes, I have to say.
I never got into abstract.
No,
it's just they're fine, but it's just, to me, I don't know. It's just
I think
it's not my thing.
It's not your thing. And I mean, that's the great thing about art, though, don't you think? Is like, what's your thing is not somebody else's thing.
For sure.
I always sort of say to people, like, I don't really like seafood and other people do. That's okay. It's like some people like my art and some people don't. I like other people's art.
People who don't are idiots.
I think about that painting. I think it was in a gallery in New York City. It was a big white canvas and it had a black dot in the middle, and it went for millions. Yeah. And I was like, I don't really understand that. But for somebody, that meant that canvas with the black dot in the middle meant something to them. So to that end, I just think like art is so subjective that, what matters to somebody doesn't matter to somebody else. And that's why I try not to get offended when people say, hey, I could do this at home.
And to me, it's one of those, like, at some point I saw some art and I was like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And so like, you'd be like, good. Yeah. Like you should do that. You should try to do that and explore your art style. But yeah, it's art, especially when you get into the millions. I always tell people, I'm like, buy what you like, and like the high end art world is just money laundering. And was it a couple years ago? Actually, it's more than a couple years ago. Banksy set up in, I think it was Central Park in New York, and it wasn't even him. He's anonymous, so had someone do it at a table in Central Park, just with a bunch of Banksy paintings for $50 a piece.
Oh my God.
And I think they sold 3.
Really?
Like one guy bought one, and then I think a woman bought 2, but like haggled them down to like $40 a piece or $30 a piece. And like his whole point was, I can put those in any gallery anywhere and sell them for hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
And without my name attached, no one was interested.
It makes you sit there and ponder and think of like, what is the value?
Yeah.
And to me, this is one of the reasons when I started painting, which was only 4 years ago, is that I wanted to make my paintings affordable, because I myself would walk into a gallery, and not that I did that often, but I would occasionally go into a gallery and you'd see something and I'd be like, that's spectacular, I would love to have it. Well, it's $20,000 or $10,000. And I remember thinking, okay, that's cool, but I have 3 kids I have to put through college. In particular, I remember a trip that my husband and I had taken to San Francisco, and we had walked into a small gallery down on the wharf, and there was a Salvador Dali sketch. Mm-hmm. And it just struck me, and I loved it. And it was $30,000. And the art gallerist was like, oh no, you should definitely buy it. It's an investment. And I was like, do you understand? At that time, my kids were like 10, 12, and 14. I'm like, I have to put these kids through college. I have a mortgage. It just was not something that I could ever afford, in being realistic. And I thought to myself, when I started painting, like, why can't everybody have a piece of real art that doesn't cost thousands of dollars or even hundreds of dollars? It just doesn't make sense to me. So to me, the value of the art is what you see in it.
Yeah.
That's where the value comes to for me. And I'm happy to paint it and give it to you, or, sell it to you for a reasonable price.
And it's an interesting thing, because I've seen so many artists who get really angry, like when, not even that their stuff is expensive, but you're talking about Joe Average, who isn't in the art world. The extent of them buying art is probably like Walmart or Target or something. And then they ask you, like, how much is this? And you give them, like $200 or $250 or whatever. And they're like, oh, that's so expensive, And it's just like putting it into perspective. It's like, they're not an art buyer.
Right. Right. And for me, I think to myself, I'm very fortunate, because the studio that I'm in is inexpensive. So my monthly rent is inexpensive, and I paint, I should say, financially savvy with my painting materials. Sure. And not buying a lot of expensive brushes and using a lot of expensive paints. As a matter of fact, when I started painting, I used paint samples that I had hanging around my house from all the times that I repainted the walls.
Yeah, from like Home Depot or whatever.
Yeah.
Like the little testers. Yeah.
Right. The Benjamin Moore, all that kind of thing. And I still use that. Whenever I go into a Home Depot or a Lowe's, I go right to the rack that gives the discounts. And I'm like, oh, what do they got over here? And I've picked up quite a few things. And so I use that. I'll use the dollar paint, the craft paint. I'll mix it with maybe something that's a little bit more, subsistent, or what was the word I'm looking for? What's the
I don't know.
Thicker? You know what I mean?
Thicker, more.
We'll do this all day.
More thicker.
More thicker. Yeah. But I take cheaper paint and I make it work. Yeah. The only thing that I do spend money on is my canvas, because you can't really, if you buy very inexpensive canvas, it just doesn't work as well. So when I'm selling my art, I use expensive canvas, but that's just me. But so that's kind of where I come from. Now, in terms of the time and the money and all that kind of thing, I charge a certain amount of money for myself per hour, and that's what goes into the painting. So if it takes me 5 hours, then, you're going to get a painting that's, somewhere under the $200 range.
And I think that's one of those things that, like, a lot of artists have a hard time with in the beginning of, like, where should I price my work?
Yeah.
And I feel like almost across the board, everyone undercharges.
For sure.
Yeah. And my youngest is now doing like commissions. They started like a TikTok channel.
Yeah.
And they're doing pretty good. They've awesome. Gotten a bunch already. And my first question is always, what did you charge?
What did you charge? Oh my gosh. That's what my husband always says.
Because I know that they are going to underprice it.
Underprice yourself. Yeah. And I did that as well. I was actually putting things into frames and selling them for very inexpensive. And I slowly brought my prices up to where I feel like that they're at a good, comfortable range right now. And again, and this is not disparaging anybody who charges more or anybody whose stuff is in a gallery for $10,000 or, like I'm just saying what works for me. And this is what I wanted for myself so that I could bring my work to a lot of people. And that's kind of how it's working for me. But if you're an artist and you're charging, $3,000 a painting, I say, go for it. Like whatever works for you is whatever works for you. This is just where I'm coming from.
And it's weird because you can actually underprice yourself out of a sale where someone who maybe is more of an art buyer looks at the painting and be like, oh, I like this. How much is it? And be like, oh, it's like $200. And they'll be like, they're used to spending like $2,000. And then in their brain, they'll be like, oh, it's obviously not worth anything. Right.
Yeah. And then to that end, I think, okay.
Yeah.
Like I've been in business for myself for so many years, doing so many different things that I've developed a pretty thick skin when it comes to what people say and think. And they often say and think those things out loud.
And they're not nice.
Yeah. And I've gotten much, much better at letting it roll off me, but it's still when you're at an art show or I'm at an art festival, like I do with you guys through Inebri-art, and people are coming through, you'll get 5,000 or, you get a 500. This is beautiful. This is beautiful. This is beautiful. And then you'll get the one person who's like, this stuff looks like it's the stuff in Home Goods. Yeah. And you're like, oh, like you hold on to those kinds of negative things. But again, I've been doing this a long time. I used to teach spin classes and people would complain about the music. You can't make everybody happy. So.
No. And we had a comedy show just the other night that someone complained about one of the comics. And it's one of those, it was a weird night because it was a snowstorm. So like half the people who bought tickets didn't even show up. And so all the comics were like engaging almost everybody in the audience just because it was such a small, weird, awkward situation. And, one of the comics, they're comics. So they said some stuff that they, I'm not even going to say probably shouldn't say. It was just they said some stuff and the girl's mom happened to be there and one of them took offense to it. I'm not even sure which one. But then, messaged the brewery and made it sound like everybody in the room was angry at this guy. And I'm like, it's not what happened, So
yeah, I mean, it's
and gotta be a little thick-skinned.
Yeah, be a little thick-skinned. And you also have to say to yourself, do you know what it's like for that person to get up there and stand up there and do comedy in front of, 15 people on a snowy Monday night? It takes a lot. And, and that's the part that sometimes I'm like, you have to kind of remember that as when people, and it's very rare that I get a negative comment, but when I do, I'm like, do you know how hard it is to stand out here and do this? It's hard. It's a lot of work to pile everything into your car and drive it down and set up the tent and deal with the weather and all that kind of stuff. I had a friend who said to me, like, when you show people your art, it's almost like opening your underwear drawer.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's like, this is like something that I created and you're judging it good or bad, so that thick skin does have to kind of come into play. But I mean, those comments still hurt a little bit.
Of course they do. Yeah.
Whenever I see something or I'm at a comedy show or whatever, I'm like making like woohoo and, like really trying to encourage people on. So yeah, this is a vulnerable type of, I guess, the art world can be very vulnerable. You're putting yourself out there.
And that's one of those, like, I know artists know this, not every, again, this is the difference between being involved in the world and just being an average person, but you don't just pick up someone's sketchbook and start thumbing through it. You ask for permission because that's basically like their diary, it is very personal. And I've had people be like, oh, can I look through your sketchbook? And they're like, yeah. And then all of a sudden like, oh, wait, no, you can't look through that one. And you're like, oh, all right, no worries.
Yeah. And it's, I, in my older age, I should say, I just appreciate more of the different styles and varieties of things that people create, whether it's music, whether it's comedy, whether it's glass ornaments for your Christmas tree, whatever it is. I'm like, I may not think that that's for me, but I appreciate what went into that. Yeah. And the fact that you're you're doing this and putting it out there for other people to see. It's hard.
I've really taken to the term maker now. I really like that term because it artists, people be like, oh, I'm an artist. People be like, you're not an artist, you're a crafter, or but maker, I think maker suits so many, if you're a chef, you're still making something from nothing. If you're an author, you're making something if you're a musician.
Right.
And those are the people that we bring on because we're kind of all cut from the same cloth. There's some variation, but most of us are pretty crazy.
We are pretty crazy.
I was just kind of talking about you.
Oh, well, I am pretty crazy. I am. And like I said, I hit 52 in 2022. I'll be 53 this year. I'm like, the older you get, the less that you just don't care and the filter goes away. And so speaking of that, though, when you talked about like the title or the idea of artist, I couldn't call myself an artist until very recently. I couldn't. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, because this was so new to me. It was, I never in 100 million years did I think this is where I would be.
Yeah.
At this point in my life, because I had a painting class in high school, and that was it, and then I did so many different things. I worked in law enforcement. I was a nutritionist. I've done so many different jobs. I was a stay-at-home mom for 3 kids. And then my most recent career was holistic nutrition and corporate health coaching. And then both of my parents got sick, and my father in particular with Alzheimer's. And we spent a lot of time together, and he passed away in 2018. And when he died, my father was he was a watercolorist, and he learned late in life. And so about a year after he died, I just felt like this weird need to start painting something. And that's when I went to my stores of paint that I had paint samples, and I started painting. And it was very sort of very rudimentary, abstract. And I put the picture up on Instagram, and this woman said, "Can I buy that?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like, I couldn't believe it. So I was like, so I just kept painting more. And from that, now it's pretty much my full-time job.
Yeah. And that's so similar to Inebri-art and how like we do things, is it kind of starts off just with a offhanded comment or a suggestion, or like, "Oh, you should do this," and be like, "All right, let's why not? Let's give it a try." And then my thing is like, if it's grown to the point now where we're doing less like cold calling and people are contacting us to be part of our events, which is great. But and it's that you have that first person who's like, "Can I buy that?" And you're like, "I mean, I guess so."
Yeah. I was floored, absolutely floored. And I think about that almost every day, to be honest with you. I think about that and the fact that I'm doing this. And my mother passed away a year after my dad, about a year and a half after my dad. And so she saw me painting, and she kept saying to me, "Where did this come from? How did I not know about this?" And I was like, "Mom, I didn't know either." And I think for me, it's obviously a gift. And, I mean, I believe it's a gift from my father, because we spent so much time together and really developed a wonderful relationship. And Alzheimer's is hard. And I feel like that, but I also feel like it was given to me now at this time in my life because of everything that had happened with them, and to help me, it was to help me, some kind of a therapy or whatever, but it has completely changed my life. And when I hear people say, "Oh, I could never do that," or "I could never, I don't have any talent," I'm over here going, "You don't know that."
I find that so frustrating. And I don't think we agree on this, because I don't find it as a gift or talent. I consider it a skill,
Okay. Yeah.
And people be like, "Oh, I can't draw." And I'll be like, "Well, how much time have you actually committed to trying to draw?"
Yep.
Like, when was the last time you drew? They'd be like, oh, I don't know, like elementary school. And like, yeah, I've been doing it for like 40 years.
Right.
Like, draw for 40 years and then tell me you can't draw.
Right.
It's just people think that one morning you wake up and
draw
the Mona Lisa.
No, you draw the Mona Lisa, or you're like chipping away and you're making, the statue of David. It's like, no. I started off, and if you look at my beginning work, it looks completely different from what I do now. I was literally like splashing paint around, and somehow it all kind of come together. And now I'm doing, much more detailed things, and I've come a long way. And I've done a lot of it through just self-taught and just, going onto YouTube and mostly just playing around with paint. But so we disagree on that. But I feel like no matter what it is, whether it's a gift or whatever, a skill, everybody has something.
Yeah.
I truly believe that. And whether it's, like my brother is this, like, he's so funny. He's such a guy's guy. And he bought a drone, and he takes the most beautiful drone pictures, just unbelievable, of Scituate and Marshfield and up and down the South Shore and Plymouth. And, he never knew that he had that. He just wanted to go fly his drone. So I feel like whatever it is that you feel like, I've always wanted to try that or do it.
Yeah.
You may not be awesome at it within the first, 5 minutes. But if you love it, you're going to keep going back to it. It's
something about when you kind of become, I'm going to say obsessed, because I can't think of a better word, but when you become obsessed with painting or drone flying or playing the guitar, like, there's always that thing that like somehow connects with the creative mentality where you're like, you can't stop thinking about it. Every minute of every day, you try to like keep improving on it, and you find the time to do what you want to do. And I think everyone has that, but it's the matter of not everyone is willing to. You have to be willing to suck really bad. And it's that minute in the beginning where you're like, I'm terrible, but I still enjoy doing this.
Yes, I completely agree. And I mean, I can't tell you how many paintings that I painted. I'm like, this is horrible, but whatever. I just would, kind of throw it to the side and move on to the next one. And a valuable piece of advice that my daughter, who's an amazing artist, told me is, Mom, you can just paint over it.
Yeah. Yep.
And I was like, oh my God, you're right.
And that's from that Joe Schmo perspective also, is like, you're only seeing the Mona Lisa. You're not seeing the sketchbooks, day in, day out.
Right.
And like, I love thumbing through, and one that just, I will always remember, I was trying to draw, what a sugar glider is?
No, I don't. What's that?
Kind of like a Australian squirrel.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So I can't remember why, but I was trying to draw a sugar glider, and it was just, I was not in the zone that day. And I just like drew an X through it and then just wrote on the page, I sugar suck. And like to this day, I still remember doing that. And it was just like, I don't know. It's just one of those days when you're like, you don't have it.
You don't have it. And I mean, I have those days, I call them bad painting days. And this is all part of the human condition. And I guess my work in holistic health has sort of maybe prepped me for this a little bit, because I look at that creative part in all of us is the sort of nutrition for your soul. And, it's not always perfect. It's not always great, but it feeds you, and it does what it's supposed to do in terms of helping you be a happy-ish, whole, healthy human being. And I personally feel like that we've moved away from this with our very technologically focused society, that the simple fact of picking up a piece of paper and a pencil and drawing a sugar glider or whatever it may be, and even laughing and poking fun at yourself saying, I suck, is really important in terms of, character development and just, again, feeding that part of your soul that is important to mental wellness.
And I'll agree. I can't necessarily agree with the technological part because I see so many people using iPads and stuff.
True.
But I think a lot of people, whether they know it or not, experienced it during COVID.
Yeah.
And that the therapeutic part of making, like how many people were making sourdough bread. And I had friends that actually didn't even turn their shed. They built a shed and turned it into a bar, and it's that process of making and doing it yourself and seeing that final product that you can both really like and still nitpick apart.
Sure.
But you're still kind of like, well, I did that. That's mine.
Right. Yeah. And I think, like for whether it's building a shed or writing or using your iPad, which I'm not saying like technology in general. I'm just saying like, I feel like the old
I knew what you meant. I was just giving
you know what I mean? The old ways of like, you know what I mean? Like people
back in my day.
But like, the things like quilting and just some of these things were considered lost arts. And now I'm seeing them come back. And to me, that's great because we never want to lose that. We don't want to lose that as human beings. I just think it's critical. The iPad, all those things are awesome. I think they are. I'd like to learn possibly doing like digital printmaking or pattern making. That always looks sort of interesting to me. And these are things that, or I always thought welding would be cool.
Yeah.
To learn how to weld.
Macrame is back.
And like, again, these are things
everyone's doing it. I just look at it and go, ugh. It's like, it just reminds me of the crap my mom used to buy laying around the house. Like the macrame owl sitting on the little branch.
Oh, on the branch. Yeah. But you know what though? These are the things, the painting, all of this stuff has been around for thousands of years. And as somebody who's in the health coach community or whatever, I always think like, what's the evolutionary process? Like, what is the reason why that we should be doing these things, And I think, well, we did these things because it was out of necessity, but also because, again, we needed that creative spirit where you can say, hey, I made that. And it made us feel good against all the other sort of stresses and crap that come along in your life.
It's really interesting that you pointed out that way. Cause like, I mean, how many times like you'll be talking on the phone or in a, Zoom meeting or whatever, you're not focused and you're just like doodling, drawing little hearts or flowers or stars or, whatever, nothing, but it's just that idea of doing something to keep your brain even slightly engaged. And, I wonder if there were, doodlers sitting around the prehistoric campfire, just drawing in the dirt and,
I think there were. Yeah, they definitely were. I mean, many, many moons ago, my husband and I went to Australia for our honeymoon.
Yeah.
And we went to Ayers Rock, which is, Google Ayers Rock. And there's all kinds of drawings around the bottom of it. And some of them do just look like doodly doos. You know what I mean? So as long as human beings have been on this earth, we have been creating.
Yeah.
And we have been creating for a reason.
And I wonder how many of those drawings, if you could talk to the person that did them and you'd be like, oh, is it a fertility thing? Or, be like, no, my wife was talking to me and I just didn't want to pay attention. So I drew a cow, I
mean, right? I mean, we don't know. I mean, was it storytelling or was it like my wife is annoying me, so I drew a cow? And, you're sitting on your Zoom call, or I was on a Zoom call yesterday and I was drawing little hearts, same thing, literally little hearts and things like that. And for me, what I feel like for me, it's sort of, it's a de-stressor for me. Is to, when you doodle and things like that, for me, it's like, oh, I'm just kind of de-stressing. And it's
weird. Like in Zoom calls and in conference calls, I found if I wasn't doodling, I wasn't paying attention at all.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like it somehow would keep me occupied enough where I could, because I'm not actively thinking about what I'm drawing. I'm just kind of doodling.
Just doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it just keeps my brain distracted enough that I can focus on the, it's a conference call. It's the worst shit you want to hear. So
It's not titillating and exciting.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, the numbers this month.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, art, baking, drone flying, welding, what drawing, whatever it is I truly believe in my heart of hearts is nutrition for the soul. And you may not be the best in the world at it. You may not be, the Mona Lisa, which I actually saw in person and is not that great.
It's really small, isn't it?
It's really small. And I was kind of like, this is it, really? To be honest, when we went into the Louvre, there were paintings in there that would knock your socks off in terms of just the most amazing things. And I'm like, everybody's crowding around the Mona Lisa. Whatever. That was my opinion. But you may not do that. And that's okay. Because it's when you create, you don't have to do it for everyone else. You can do it just for yourself. Yeah.
And I mean, we have the figure drawing group all the time, and people are like, oh, I'm not that good. I'm like, it's not about being good. Like 90% of what I draw, the figure drawing group just sits in a sketchbook and no one will ever see.
Yeah.
It's practice and it's having fun and it's just getting out and being social with something that's really not a social. Drawing's not a social thing.
Well, I mean, you don't necessarily, I feel like with being social, it doesn't mean you always have to be talking to people.
Yeah.
It's just because you're in the mere presence of other human beings who are doing a like-minded activity. A level of social communication in a different way.
Right. And I mean, I'm just thinking of like, I know friends that work professionally in the art world, and he's like, I joined a gym, and I'm like, cool. He's like, so I can see other people.
Yeah.
Because he spends so much time just like in his office creating.
It's super. I mean, when I go to my studio, I mean, I'm in a building in Rockland where there's over 100 artists in the building. And, I see people, I've been going there for 3 years now, and I've chats with people, and then I go in and I shut the door and it's just me. Now, I personally like that. I like the silence. I don't listen to music very often or podcasts. It's just silent. That works for me, but
that would drive me crazy.
See, it's funny how everybody's so different, but I'm in such a zone that it doesn't bother me at all. But when I go to events, like when we do, I do like art on the green, I come home and I'm like, oh my God, that's too many people like talking. I'm like exhausted from it all. But art can be isolating. It can be, for sure. So I think it just kind of depends on who you are and what you like. And that's okay. If you like to not talk to anybody, that's fine too. Yeah. Yeah.
And again, I think people really need to consider what their end game is with art. Like if you want to be a professional artist and selling work, you're gonna have to learn to talk to people. Like that's part of it.
For sure.
But if you're just creating for yourself, then like it doesn't matter. Just like, get a sketchbook, let the sketchbooks pile up. I have tons of them. Every once in a while you go through them and look and be like, oh, this was better than I thought. Or like,
yes,
I used to like this one. Oh, what's wrong with me? Yeah.
I do that all the time. I'll be in my studio and I'm like, start looking around at the paintings on the wall. Then I'm like over there, like changing them or messing around with them. There is, I think sometimes like spending too much time alone, maybe, and not getting other people's perspective. But I agree for sure. Yeah, I agree.
I when you're saying that, I realize when I do that is almost always when I start dating someone new.
Yeah.
And like for a little bit, and then you start talking about like, oh, I want to see some of your drawings. You'd be like, well, I have these sketchbooks. And then they want to go through all of the sketchbooks.
It's the underwear drawer.
Yeah, and then you're kind of like, yeah, it's a weird experience, because then every once in a while they'll like flip me like, what's this about? You'd be like, yeah, I don't want to talk about that.
It's because you feel like you're being judged one way or the other. Like, wow, are they thinking, wow, he really sucks, or or he's weird, or whatever it is. It's a judgment.
Well, they're both right. Both of those judgments are accurate.
That's not true. But I mean, so I think it's okay to say like, no, thank you. I mean,
yeah, but I don't think that far ahead. I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then like, you're like, oh, damn it.
I'm a pretty open book, but people have said to me, can I just like come to your studio? And I'm like, no, you need to let me know. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, just, I'd be happy to set up an appointment or whatever, but like generally it's because it's my sacred quiet time, and if I'm painting, I'm not talking.
Right. And it's like you kind of have that time scheduled out to create.
And yeah. And
you want to hang out and talk or you have a glass of wine. Let's do that. That's separate.
Let's do that for sure. And I am so, oh my gosh, I can't even tell you how grateful I am to be doing this. And I've sold almost over 350 paintings.
Damn.
In 4 years. Now they're all inexpensive. So
yeah, but still, I mean, that's having 350 paintings in 4 years. That's really prolific.
Yeah. I mean, so not all of them were, I've sold 48 by 48s all the way down to little tiny 12 by 12s,
Yeah. So I can't remember what the size of the one at Buzzards Bay.
Like I think it's a 20 by 20.
Yeah, I can't.
Is there a big? There might be a 24 by.
There's a big one down there that I'm like, all right, she can't send these anymore because it just barely fits in my car.
No more of those big ones.
Yeah, like, that's too big.
But I just think to myself, I don't know why this has happened and why I'm doing this, but I love it and I'm super grateful for it. And I want that for other people. I want other people not to have a studio and be able to paint and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I still do holistic health and nutrition. This is not my, I can do this mostly full time, but I still have to supplement with other income. But there's something for everybody. I don't know what that is, but there is something for everybody. And you don't have to make it your job. You can just do it because you like to.
Right. And I think a lot of people are better off not making it their job and lose interest when they're like, oh, I'm going to, turn this into a little side hustle. And then they're like, oh, this thing that used to be fun is work now.
And it into that. And that is true. And I think the hardest part for me is the work part of it, which is the social media and doing I just started a YouTube channel where I'm doing little videos, all of those different things. It's work. And I don't love it. I love to paint. But, if I want people to buy the paintings and know about me, unfortunately, you have to do that other part of it, which can be a real pain in the ass.
And that's the thing. I have so many people now that'd be like, oh, what kind of art do you do? And I'm like, honestly, I rarely do anything now. I'm like, I'm so busy.
Yeah. You're so busy.
Yeah. I'm like, I never said I was the best artist, but clearly I'm the most organized. So, because I'm the one that, puts together the shows and promotes them. And I'm like, that's fine. That's because I do enjoy that part. But sometimes you're just like, I'm just kind of hanging out and just drawing,
Yeah. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And you have to be willing to, like you're doing, is to push that aside a little bit in order for the, the larger thing to happen, which is for Inebri-art to grow and for it to be everywhere.
Yeah. So we're going to be up in Maine. When are you moving?
We are moving probably, we're hoping for September, October of this year.
Damn, that's soon.
Yeah. We're starting building in April. And so I'll be sad to move to Maine, but not sad. I'm happy to move there. Yeah. I'm happy to move to Maine, but I'll be sad to leave my friends and stuff around here. But it's a new chapter, and hopefully people will buy paintings in Maine.
Yeah, but probably of like bears and barns.
Bears and moose and things like that. But I would be happy to take Inebri-art into Maine. And
I'm already planning you are.
Okay, good.
I didn't ask if you were happy.
I'm gonna need supplemental income. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'd be great. Yeah, I mean, you don't mind hanging out breweries, right?
No, I mean, I do anyway. His name is Mike McLaughlin.
Yeah. And I gotta say, it's. I was talking with someone the other day, and it's become like this weird life where I'm like, we deal with so many vendors now that I have to actively kind of keep distant a little bit, because I'm like, I can't be everyone's friend,
Yeah.
But I'm glad you kind of snuck in under that bar, because like we're friends. Because you were before I made that decision. Now I'm kind of like, all right, I can't play favorites.
You and Fish are like my buds. And I have that way though, Andy.
We're like-minded people, like
we are like-minded people.
As soon as you showed up and Mike showed up, I'm like, all right, these two, they're a good fit. Yeah.
They're good peeps. Yeah. And and I'm so happy that I slid in before the rule went.
Yeah, and it's not a rule. It's just
it's a lot.
It's a lot of people, and it's just trying to keep a professional air about things.
Yeah, because this is a professional thing. It's for very it's fun and lighthearted and exciting and creative and all that kind of stuff, but it's still a professional.
Yeah, I don't need everybody knowing my business.
No,
I just come out on a podcast and talk about it.
Same.
Yeah, whatever. Where can people go to find your work? What's your social?
So you can come to my studio, but just let me know.
Yeah, in advance.
So
are you at the Sandpaper Factory? Is that
no? I am in the E.T. Wright building.
Okay.
It was an old shoe factory in Rockland. The building is right across from Mary Lou's. It's on Liberty Street, 379 Liberty Street. So my studio is there, and I'm there just about every day, usually 5-6 days a week.
And they do like open studios and stuff there too, right?
They do. We usually have, it's in the, it's the weekend before Christmas. Before Thanksgiving, excuse me. That's the holiday big push. Mm-hmm. And then we have another one in the spring. I don't know when that's going to be this year. I'm not sure. I'll have to inquire about that. I do a variety of different art festivals. I'm doing Cohasset on the Common in June. I'm doing one or two with you. One that's coming up. I'm not sure where. I forget what. I forget. And then I'm kind of waiting to see how the rest of the summer goes. So a few over the summer. And then, of course, my website, which is Julianne McLaughlin fineart.com. And then my Facebook, which is the same, Julianne McLaughlin Fine Art, Fine and Abstract Art. So,
and your YouTube channel? You said you have a YouTube channel.
I have a YouTube channel. Yep. It's the same thing, Julianne McLaughlin Fine Art. And then I'm on Instagram as well. So I'm on all the socials. And the YouTube thing is I'm just want people to kind of be able to get that creative spark and not be intimidated by painting. Because oftentimes, not often, but sometimes you go onto YouTube and it says it's a beginner level. And it's like, that's not a beginner. They're painting like, really intricate things. So I'm really trying to do beginner type artwork. So so they've got that going too.
Cool. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk.
Oh, this was awesome. So much fun. I really appreciate it.
I feel like it's been a while since I've seen you.
I know it's been a while. Yeah. Well, it's winter. We don't come out in the winter.
Yeah. I do. I got shit to do today.
You got shit to do.
But thanks again. And thanks to our listeners. We'll see you guys again next week.
Take care.
And thanks for checking out the show today, listeners. If you enjoyed the content today, you can go over to patreon.com/Inebri-art to support the show. You can join over there for just a few dollars a month and help us provide this fun content that you just checked out. You can also email us at Inebri-art.com with your questions, complaints, and concerns, or you can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or at Inebri-art6 on Instagram. And also don't forget to check out our other shows, Bar Talk Podcast, Old Colony Cast, Inebri-art, and all the other shows on the Inebri-art Network, which you can find at Inebri-art.com. Thanks again for listening.